Blanche, struggling to get away. Dr. Chapler said in his letter that Blanche tried to make a break out of the clinic. And he had a big, strong nurse. I tried to figure out who the nurse was. Had a big, strong nurse that grabbed her and wouldn't let her out. But, yeah, go ahead. Those are the weapons. That's a Browning. That day they confiscated 4 Brownings. 4. And I believe there were 40 Colt 45 automatics, plus probably 10 or 12 other guns, plus 3 inner tubes full of ammunition, 3,000 rounds. Were they ready for a gun battle? Yep. All those Colt 45s were loaded too. So if they did get in a gun battle, it was just like, okay, I'm going to pass them on down the line. You often hear the stories that Bonnie never shot. I don't think Blanche had ever shot a gun. And you need to read stuff about, well, Bonnie never shot a gun either. In fact, W.D. Jones said he never saw Bonnie or Blanche ever shoot. I don't believe the thing about Bonnie, because the guy that got shot, Rex Riley, the guy I was telling you about, his family said, Riley said that it was a woman that shot him. So I'm guessing Bonnie. Go ahead. There's some more of the guns. It's interesting because a lot of those guns had to go back to the armory, but there were a lot of guns that ended up, that's a great mystery where those guns ended up, because when I was working up there at Perry, I tried to find out where those guns were at. Because I heard a story that they were in ADAL at the sheriff's office, Dallas County. Called there and they didn't know what I was talking about. And they said, you called Des Moines, they might have, because there's Des Moines police. I called Des Moines and they thought I was crazy. Bonnie and Clyde, hell, that was back in '33. This is 2012. So what are you talking about? But anyway, I don't know what happened to them. Nobody does. I think they're probably in somebody's closet somewhere. Go ahead. Last part of the story and I'll be done here. This is Marvell Feller. And this comes straight out of Marvell's mouth. Marvell was a 19-year-old scrapping guy back in 1933 and worked on his dad's farm. His dad's name was Valley. Remember, I told you Bonnie and Clyde were on the river. They crossed the river. Bonnie was in terrible shape. W.D. Jones was carrying her and helping Clyde too, because Clyde was shot up. But they were out in the middle of nowhere, and I'm sure wanted to know what they were going to do, because you cross the river and there's a field. On that field there was a fence, though. There was a fence that went to the north. And so Clyde decided we're going to follow the fence. Okay? And eventually the fence led to the Valley Feller farmstead. Okay? This is Marvell's story. This is at 6:15 in the morning on July 24th, 1933. Marvell said, we're going down to get the cows to milk. First question I asked Marvell, I said, didn't you hear all the shooting? Marvell said, well, yeah, there was a little shooting that went on that morning. He says, but he said, there's always shooting in the river valley. I said, that much? He said, there was a gun battle. And Marvell said, well, maybe there was a little bit more than usual. But anyway, I could never get him going. But anyway, he said, me, my dad, and my uncle, Walt Spillers, going down to get the cows. And he said, we're walking down, and I see this guy, this muddy, bloody guy, up next to the fence. And my dog, Rex, the German Shepherd's over there barking at him. And the guy hollers at him and says, call the dog off or I'm going to kill him right here. And so Marvell ran over, pulled the dog back. He said, I looked up and there was a 45 pointed at my head. And the guy said, the laws have shot the hell out of us. Do you have a car? Marvell said, well, we actually have 3. And only 1 runs. The other 2 were on blocks, and that was the truth. He said we had 2 cars, but they didn't run. He said, and we had just bought this car. A 1929 blue Plymouth. Okay? Just got it 2 weeks ago. But anyway, so the guy said, good enough for me. And he whistles, and here comes W.D. carrying Bonnie up. He said, my dad and I lifted her over the fence. He said, my dad dropped her. Clyde got madder than hell. Don't let it happen again because I don't want to hurt you. So here they go, up through the cow yard. Walt Spillers, the uncle, and Valley and Marvell carrying Bonnie up to the farmstead. In the meantime, they got up there, and here comes Marvell's mother out. And Marvell and Sister Louise were coming out to talk to Valley, the husband, to tell him that she had just gotten a call to be on the lookout. Outlaws in the valley. Outlaws in the valley. And she sees her husband, brother, son, all being led at gunpoint. And so she turns around and starts back in the house. And Clyde tells Marvell, you get her back here. She ain't going to call the police now. So they make a step. So they're all there. Where's the car? Over there, Marvell said, get it out. So he pulled it out. And he said, I had to help Bonnie in the back seat. He said, WD called back there, crawled back there with her. And he said, the only one that was talking at all, he said, we weren't talking. He said, Clyde Barrow was talking. And he said, Clyde Barrow was apologizing for having to steal their car. He said, I know how, I know. He said, my life depends on it today, though. So I got to take it. He said, but I'm going to be back. He told Marvell, I'm going to be back. He said, I'm either going to send you something in the mail for payment for the car, or he said, I'll come back in person. Good trips to Iowa. I'll never let the fellow farm. Come up the half-mile long driveway, drop off a check or two, but probably not. But anyway, Marvell was telling me that story. He says, yeah. He says, I've been checking my mailbox for 77 years. He said, I haven't got a damn thing from Clyde Barrow. At the time he said, I don't think it, you think I am, Rod? I said, I don't think so. I think that train has left. It was funny the way Marvell says it. I wouldn't wait 77 years for something like that. But get this, they, FBI showed up and they censored their mail for like 6 months. A year. So to make sure that Clyde didn't send something. But anyway, so okay, they're in the car, Marvell said, and they're waiting for him to a long driveway to the road, and they're just sitting there. So Marvell has to go up the window and says, what? You got a car? Get out of here. Clyde Barrow, remember how I told you Clyde Barrow was a great driver, right? Could get out of all these predicaments, knew how to drive every car, right? He looks at Marvell and says, I don't know how to shift the gears in this Plymouth. So Marvell said, I had to climb in the car. He said, the gun was sitting right here on the dash. He said, I could have grabbed it, been a hero. But he said, if I missed, it might be me dead or my family dead. So he said, I just didn't do it. So he showed him the gear sequence in this Plymouth. Now I was curious about that because most of you have driven something on the floor, a 3-speed on the floor, a 4-speed on the floor, and Fords and Chevys. I mean, the first gear, when I was growing up, first was over here, and then you went up to second, then down to third, or if it was a 4-speed. But everything started over here on the left, right? Okay. So I was doing this program once, and some old guy older than me, that took a lot, but said, hey, I'll tell you what happens there. He said, a Plymouth, back in that year of Plymouth, the low gear started over on the right. So first gear was on the right, second gear up here, third gear right here. So if Clyde was trying to start out over here, he was starting out third gear. You ever try to drive a car with a clutch in third gear? down the road you go eventually, if you don't kill it. You don't kill it. But anyway, he said I got in there and showed him, and they took off down the lane, and they ended up going through Redfield. And people in Redfield saw Valley Feller's car. Back when I was growing up, and you said you guys are old enough too, that when you were in town, you saw somebody's car and you go, oh yeah, the Smiths are in town. Or the Joneses are in town, or the Stanleys are in town, because that's the car that they drive. Well, they saw Valley Feller's car. And it was driving up over curbs. It was just going like a bat out of hell. Around Redfield, they're thinking, God, what's wrong with Valley this morning? But anyway, so they had this car, and they end up wrecking this car up by Polk City Island and into a telephone post. And they steal another car from a fellow by the name of George Albright. It's a 29 Chevy, maybe. And that's the car they're in for the next 6 weeks. And they actually abandoned that car out in Nebraska, like Broken Bow, Nebraska. 6 weeks. Basically, did you get enough or not? I story, and I have a real passion about it, and it's Dexter's history. And again, there's some people that don't appreciate it, Dexter. Even today, they don't appreciate it. And as long as I'm alive and still can breathe, I'm probably going to be called. I've given this program over this whole state of Iowa. So it's not just Jefferson, Iowa, but I'm glad to see so many historic people come out today to listen to this story. You guys have any questions that you want to ask? Yes, ma'am.
You mentioned it with Bob Feller.
Cousin.
Okay.
Cousin. Bob Feller's
Is
cousin.
he a fan eater?
Van Meter, yeah. I do another program about Bob Feller. And Niall Kinnick. Did you know Niall Kinnick and Bob Feller played baseball together on Bob Feller's dad's town, or it's not a town team, but it was like a legion team. I got to tell this. Niall Kinnick was a catcher for Bob Feller on his team. Niall Kinnick was a catcher. Okay? And Bob Feller would get really pissed off because Niall Kinnick brought his football to baseball. And while they were playing catch or doing whatever, Niall would be over practicing these drop kicks. And he said it just made it just infuriated Bob. But yeah, he was Morrow was a catcher. Somebody else, yes sir.
So it seems like Clyde knew about a lot of things. He knew about guns, he knew about automobiles, except for Plymouths apparently, and he knew about driving so well. How did he learn all those things? What was his upbringing like that prepared him at such a young age to know all that stuff?
I think just experience. I mean, the stealing of cars was a guessing game. I'm sure there were certain ones he loved the Fords. When W.D. Jones got caught, and in this movie you guys are going to watch, there's going to be a little character in there. There's a character, and it's supposed to be a combination of W.D. Jones, and there was another guy that ran with. He had like 3 or 4 different partners in crime, but W.D. Jones, and then there was a Henry Methvin, and then there's a couple other guys, and that one character is supposed to be a kind of a combination of all of them. And in this movie, when you watch it, this guy, this little fellow, he's a famous actor too, I can't remember what his name is, but anyway, he's tinkering with the cars. He's tinkering with the cars, and he's driving cars, with Clyde in the car with him driving. And when W.D. Jones got caught, and then W.D. became famous right before this movie came out. They looked W.D. Jones up to ask him about Clyde Barrow. And that was one of the things they asked him. They said, did you drive a car a lot when Clyde was there? And he said, the only time I drove a car was when there were 2 cars. And they asked him about tinkering with the car. He said, did you ever tinker with the car? And he said, the only one that ever tinkered with the car was Clyde Barrow. He said, he knew our lives depended on whether his tinkering was going to work or not. But he said that he could tinker with the flathead 8 and could move faster than 80. And I'm trying to figure out if the speedometer went to 80, but I don't know how you determine whether it goes faster than 80. But he said the car would go faster than what the speedometer said. Well, after Clyde tinkered with it. But I mean, he was brought up on the wrong side of the tracks. A lot of it was experience, I'm sure. The car experimentation, I suppose, fixing cars and things, he was pretty skilled at that. But getting away from the laws where he developed his driving skills. It's either that or you kill one or the other. Somebody else, yes, sir.
Are Bonnie and Clyde buried together, and
No.
where are they buried, and was there ever a shrine there?
No, they aren't buried together. They were killed in Gibbsland in May 24, 1934. Mama Parker said, there's no way my daughter's going to be buried to that outlaw Clyde Barrow. So they're buried in separate cemeteries in Dallas, Texas. Shrines, no. There's some stuff going on. My friend, I was talking about, I'm friends with Buddy, and him and the nephew of Clyde Barrow and the niece of Bonnie Parker are getting together, and they're trying to get it arranged where they're going to move one or the other to be buried side by side. But Mom Parker said there's no way. I'm gonna let my daughter get buried to that outlaw that corrupted her. But she was in it up to her neck anyway. So, I mean, she loved Clyde Barrow with all her heart. So, but anyway, the other question, yes sir.
How did they ever decide to make a movie about this?
I think Bonnie and Clyde is, I mean, I think they've been popular, I mean, if you want to call them popular, I mean, they've been, since they got killed at Giblin, I mean, ever since that time, there's followers. You wouldn't believe how many people I have come, I thought I was crazy about Bonnie and Clyde. I get people come to Dexter that are like, wow, you're worse than me. That's pretty hard. And that's the reason why people think I glorify them, and it's like, no, I'm interested in their lives, particularly the part about Dexfield Park. You know, I'm always finding things out. I was going to say this, I'm always trying to find things out about Bonnie and Clyde. And one thing I found out the other day was that Clyde, when they were driving, he didn't wear shoes. He drove in his stocking feet. That might be because